All right, everyone, we are going to talk a little bit about the Vietnam War. What I'd like for you to get out of this is thinking about how the policy of containment directs the United States in their actions. At the end of this, there's going to be the big question, was communism contained or did it expand? So we're going to look at how Vietnam was used as a proxy war between the United States and the USSR. The Vietnam War lasted from 1954 to 1975. Let's look at how this conflict began. The Vietnam War was a conflict between the communist regime of North Vietnam and Viet Cong. Viet Cong being communist-led guerrillas, and the anti-communist South Vietnam and its allies, like the United States. Now, the Viet Cong are communist-led guerrillas. This does not mean that they were literally a guerrilla like the animal. Down here, I defined guerrillas for you. Guerrillas were a small group of fighters, such as paramilitary personnel, armed civilians, or irregulars. They used military tactics, including ambushes, sabotage, raids, petty warfare, hit-and-run tactics, and mobility to fight a larger and less mobile traditional military. That is what a guerrilla is. The communist regime of the North wanted to unify Vietnam into a single state that would be based on communist ideology. In 1958, the Viet Cong began to battle the South Vietnamese government. So in the Edpuzzle, I want you to answer this question. Describe the conflict of the Vietnam War based on this first paragraph. All right, moving down to this paragraph. Motivated by a policy of containment, the United States pledged support for the anti-communist South Vietnam. The United States and its allies provided training and equipment from the American military. The United States also deployed large numbers of military personnel to South Vietnam. Later in the war, the United States launched airstrikes and committed more foot soldiers. Answer this question in the Edpuzzle. How did the U.S. support the anti-communist South Vietnam? From 1968 to 1973, efforts were made to end the conflict through diplomacy or dialogue. By January 1973, an agreement was reached and the United States forces were withdrawn from Vietnam and the United States prisoners of war were released. In 1975, South Vietnam surrendered to the North. Vietnam was unified as a communist state called the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Answer this question in the Edpuzzle. What did the U.S. and its allies want during the Vietnam War? The Vietnam War had disastrous effects. Vietnam's infrastructure was destroyed and farmland was polluted by American chemical warfare. An estimated 2 million Vietnamese died and another 3 million were wounded. About 12 million became refugees who fled to neighboring countries. During the Vietnam War, 58,000 Americans died in Vietnam, and the war cost the United States millions of dollars. The United States' entrance into the war led to protests by students and others at home in the United States. Despite all the money and troops the U.S. sacrificed, it failed to contain communism. Finally, by 1973, United States President Richard Nixon announced that America was abandoning the Truman Doctrine, or the doctrine that the United States would provide political, military, and economic assistance to all democratic nations under threat from external or internal communist forces. Your final question for the Edpuzzle. As a result of the Vietnam War, was communism contained or was it expanded? Explain.